All right, let's get things kicked off here. And I see the panelist joining us on video. But before we get started, just want to go through a couple housekeeping notes. And those of you that have joined us on roundtables before, you'll notice that that's probably not changed all that much, right? If you want to talk with the other attendees, please feel free to use the chat. We love to hear your best practices. We love to hear what you're doing out there. This month being focused on employee recognition, I'm guessing there's a lot of different ideas that maybe we won't even talk about on the panel. So would love to hear the free flow of comments in the chat section. Use that to work together and try to bring up best practices. A reminder that all sessions are being recorded, and we do email this out to all registrants after the event. And then lastly, if you have questions for the presenter or for any of the panelists, please use the Q&A. It's the easiest way for us to be able to see that there's a question out there, and really allows us to be able to get on top of that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. We still have folks that are joining in as we talk here, so we'll try to catch them up as they come in. But wanted to welcome everybody to the September WrenchWay Roundtable, where we're focusing on employee recognition. Per Gallup, the #1 reason most people leave their jobs is because of a lack of recognition. And we hear the same thing in the industry over and over and over again. Techs talk to us and say, hey, listen, I just don't feel like I'm appreciated. Maybe I don't feel like I'm anything other than a number. And as managers, a lot of times that's really hard, right? Because you're trying to balance their happiness along with the happiness of your leadership, right? Or of the ownership, and making sure that you hit your KPIs, making sure that you hit your profitability numbers, and really walking that plank can be really difficult to make sure that you're appeasing everybody. So what we're here today to do is talk about that. Talk about different ways that we can show techs that we appreciate them. I know I talk to managers every day. We do greatly appreciate our techs. And I do think that's been a little bit of shift in mindset over the last couple decades, where, maybe going back a couple decades ago, it was more, they're lucky to have a job here. That's really shifted. And I think we need to adapt as an industry. And what I think you'll learn today, and hopefully you've got some takeaways that you'll take back to your shop, is that it takes some intentionality. It takes some purpose to be able to really employ this employee recognition, or be able to deploy employee recognition. So joining me today to talk about this extremely important subject are three panelists that I think very highly of, and I think can speak with a lot of experience in this regard, and just do a really good job. So I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. And Eric, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. If you can give us a little bit of your background, we'd love it.
My name is Erick. I'm a service manager for International Autos for their Subaru and Volvo store. I have been in the automotive industry here in this building now for about 20 plus years now, Jay.
And you're doing something fairly cool on Sunday mornings. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we created a group to be able to extend our knowledge across the country. Actually, now we've started to pick up people around the world. And what we do is we pick a topic and we try to share our knowledge. And it's basically to bring it back here to our stores and be able to apply to see what does and or does not work, to be the best we can, provide the best experience for the customers and for the employees at the same time.
It is an awesome discussion every week. And just if you're looking to learn more, and I know so many people that are on attending this webinar are people that are striving for bigger things, right? And I think really surrounding yourself with people like Eric puts out every single week is a really good way of doing that. So shout out to Service Drive Live. You guys do a fantastic job with it, and it's just so awesome to see what you guys are doing out there. Chuck, little background on you, my friend.
My name's Chuck Boyer. I'm with Beaverton Toyota in Oregon here, and I've been in the service industry for about 23 years here. Been with Toyota for about 6 altogether. and I'm happy to be here. Happy to speak with you guys.
Appreciate it, Chuck. If anybody wants to know about how Chuck goes about employee recognition, there's a really good Shop Talk video that they put out talking about a title belt they give away every month, and it's really cool. I think it's just a way to almost force yourself to do some recognition, but they take a lot of pride in it. They have a lot of fun with it, and if you get a chance, go out to their WrenchWay page. You'll be able to see that, or it's in the Shop Talk feed. It's amazing stuff. So great work on that, Chuck.
Yeah, thanks. The techs love it.
Yes. Scott, how are you, my friend?
Very well. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, there we go. Now I got audio. There you go.
Excellent. My name is Scott Lappalainen, and I work for the Advantage Truck Group of New England. We are a Freightliner Western Star dealership. I've been in the transportation industry for pushing 30 years now, and I've been in the human resources end of it for about the last 10. So got a little bit of experience with recruiting and retention.
I love it. And one of the things, I say this, I believe, every single month, but what I love about what we're able to do with these roundtables is bring people from different parts of our industry into this conversation, right? You'll see that we've got two folks from the automotive dealer side. A lot of times we'll have somebody from the independent side or the truck side or equipment side. But I think that the beauty in that is that you're bringing ideas out that maybe aren't regurgitated from everything that we hear in a lot of the different types of conferences that we go to. Maybe you can get some different ideas from some different perspectives. And that's one of my favorite things about these roundtables is just being able to pull different backgrounds to hear different ideas. And hopefully that sparks things that you all can take back to your shops and implement and hopefully make the lives of technicians better. So as I say that, let's get started into the actual content. And in our pre-meeting, one of the things that stuck out to me was we almost had an idea of employee recognition focusing on compensation, right? It's really easy to look at money and say, hey, you know what? Money is the reason that we come to work every day. It's obviously super important, but really what we're trying to do is drive past that. So what I want to start with is identifying what employee recognition is and what it means to the three of you. And really, I guess if we can define it to start, then we can kind of build from there. So Erick, I'm going to start with you. When you look at employee recognition, how do you define it? What is it?
Well, I'll tell you right from the beginning, it's not something that I've created myself. The culture here starts from the top. Our fixed ops director, Joe Chambers, does a wonderful job.
Don't inflate his ego too much already.
I'll try not to. One of the key factors that he taught me was is being able to recognize people the way they want to be recognized, and knowing your staff is the most important right now more than ever. Not everybody wants to be recognized in the same fashion. So if you're going to do something good, recognize that person how they'd want to be recognized. Some people want time off. Some people it's monetary. Some people it's public. Some people it's private. Some people want to be able to be taken out to dinner, whatever the case might be. Knowing your staff right now is a very important part of the process to be able to recognize properly.
I use this story often where I had a technician that was working for me, and I offered praise in front of the entire group, right? I got the whole shop together to talk about how great this person had done and thought I was doing a really good thing. And I was a young manager at the time. And I had that technician come up to me after the meeting and say, Jay, that was the most embarrassing thing I've ever been through in my life. So I learned that at an early age. You do have to get to know them a little bit. And Chuck, I'm guessing you might have some similar insight there.
Yeah, mine's pretty similar. We, as far as recognition, what I describe it as here at our store, and a lot like Erick, I mean, our process and how we do things starts from the top. We have our director, Jim Waters, we have our GM, Jake, and our owner, Russ Hummerson. And they pull together, come up with some great ideas, and it works out great for us. One thing we do is we do celebrate, every time we get a chance. We get things together, like we did a rafting trip in August. This month we're doing employee relays where we're having like a double dare type game around the dealership we're all playing, and that involves service and sales, which is great. It was great last year. We think it's going to be great this year. Everybody participates. We give out prizes. But as far as recognition, a big part of that is like you said, it's not always pay. You want them to be satisfied with working with them and patting them on the back. Some people love that, and keeping them satisfied makes them go the extra mile for you. And it's retention. It's keeping them there at your dealership. It's also word of mouth. If they love where they work at, they're bringing other technicians to you, because technicians hang around other technicians, and when they're talking to each other, they're like, you know what, my place of work is great. We do this, we do that. Somebody else can be like, you know what, I want to do that too, and they come aboard, and you have more technicians just by word of mouth. So recognizing your technicians, keeping them happy and satisfied and busy, pays for itself.
Yeah, it really does. And I think you hit on a few different good points there, but that point where technicians talk, right? They're talking back and forth constantly. It's a small community when it comes down to it. And I, something that I think we concentrate on a lot is forcing our clients to look in the mirror a little bit, because I do think that's really, really important. I've had conversations with managers before that might not have had a realistic outlook on how technicians see them. And what happens then is they have a false reality, and maybe the technicians have some gossip going in the background that doesn't match what they think their reality is, and are wondering why it's really, really difficult for them to find technicians. Well, if you get people going out and you go to any Facebook group right now, and there's an abundance of technicians that talk about how much they dislike the industry and that they wouldn't recommend other people getting into it. Now, I do think that's the vocal minority, but it is concerning, because if you don't have that accurate depiction of how technicians see you, it's going to be really hard to build a not only recruiting plan, but a retention plan as well. So Scott, curious with your background and how many years you've got in this business, is what they're saying pretty spot on?
It really is. Here at Advantage Truck Group, we were founded by a diesel technician. His name's Kevin Holmes. He started the company. So he's developed a culture here that really focuses on connecting with the individual. You can find Kevin more often than not on the shop floor talking to the technicians. And, I've been at companies where the only time management has one-on-one conversations is that once a year employee review. And that's the only time, unless there's a disciplinary problem or somebody's walking out the door and you're trying to do a save and exit interview. So it's really refreshing, and to work at an organization where they value that connection with the individual. And I think that's the foundation of recognition is, and Eric mentioned it and Chuck mentioned it, getting to know your employees on a personal level to find out what makes them tick.
Again, I think you hit on a really good point, and understanding how difficult a technician's job is. I know we want to glorify it a lot, but there are some difficulties in being a technician, right? So many folks out there, it's been sweltering hot in a lot of areas the last few weeks, and those techs out there just busting it, trying to do their best, but it's hard. And something as simple as just thinking about them and bringing them ice cream, or doing something, it's not, again, not monetary, but it's showing that, hey, you know what, I appreciate what you're doing out there, and it's authentic. Being able to put yourself in the shoes of a tech, how important is that, Scott? I mean, it's your ownership has had that ability to actually be in the shop and know how hard it is. I think that goes a long ways, doesn't it?
It really does. And you were talking about the heat. Our service director, during a heat wave we had this summer, he drove we've got 8 locations. So he was driving around from location to location, just bringing people bottles of water, cold, ice cold water. And it makes a difference, because you get to talk to somebody, you have that opportunity to understand where they are in the moment. And it is really the foundation of employee recognition.
One thing I'd like to point out, don't discount the value of getting air conditioning in your shops. And the reason I say that is everybody that I talk to says, oh man, it's just too expensive. There's no way we can do that. My dad's little independent shop here in Wisconsin has air conditioning, and they did the calculation. It paid for itself within like the first like 3 years of having air conditioning. And it was maybe taking the approach of not saying, oh, we can't do that, too expensive, but actually looking into it and saying, okay, their job is really hard, especially you folks down in the South right now. Don't just discount it as too expensive. Actually look at it and imagine what your productivity would do and what the happiness of your staff would do if you provided air conditioning. It's just a really good additional way to drive satisfaction and not dread going to work on a 105-degree day where you're just gonna. I always use the analogy of or the example of when a car would drive 100 miles down to get an oil change, and you're underneath the car doing an oil change on a 100-degree day, and that exhaust is bearing down on you. It sucks. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is not the most fun thing to do. So, I think just wanted to point that out there. If you get a chance, make sure you look into it, do your research, and not only air conditioning, but anything you can do to make a technician's life easier. Get out there, do the research. Don't just say no. Actually understand it and do a better job at it. Speaking of the payoff of some of this employee recognition, what do you guys see for benefits when it comes to employee recognition? And I think this can be a really loaded question, or it can be a super vague question, right? Where there's obviously benefits to treating your people well and recognizing them for a job well done. But Erick, what do you see for benefits of recognition and somebody, getting the attention they deserve?
One of the benefits is one of the nicest things that I see is when our technicians begin to know the customer and the customer begins to know the technician. I have calls and hey, that's my customer, I know them. And then they'll come out and greet the customer. And I think that recognition on its own of, hey, this is my customer, I want to take care of this vehicle, or the customer coming in and saying, hey, I want to work with Erick, the technician. I think that's the biggest compliment a technician could receive. That to me, that the benefit of keeping people in our store long term, and somebody comes in and you're able to say, yeah, that technician has been with us 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, speaks for itself. So that's one of the biggest compliments I think out of the recognition program. 100%.
And equally, if you got a shop with high turnover, again, techs are a close-knit community. They know that there's turnover, and they're going to question why, right? Why is there so much turnover? And if you've got that turnover issue, again, get to the core of it. Why are you having that turnover issue, and try to solve it? And it's not an easy thing to do. If you've got a lot of turnover, that can be a real challenge. Chuck, anything you can add there? I mean, in terms of benefits of employee recognition, making sure that people know that they're valued.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, a lot of it is your employee satisfaction. It's also nice to when as far as retention, keeping your technicians there, when you have them from the lube rack and they go on to like Advanced Express where they're doing more maintenance, and then their main shop. Watch them grow. It's a great thing. As far as also watching their training, because when they're coming into our dealership, some of them are coming right out of high school. They may have student ASCs, but some of them don't. But they're coming in fresh. You're watching them progress along the way. Is a great thing, and become main shop technicians where they're getting certified and becoming masters is awesome. And that pays for itself, because as you have that guy from start to finish, if you're a manufacturer like Toyota or like any other, he knows that product. He has a depth knowledge of that product. So a lot of the issues that come up in concerns, he knows them pretty much right away. He can almost shotgun them. And that works out really good for you, because it creates work being done quicker, less guesswork for him and for your team. So it all pays for itself. And it helps, like I said, word of mouth goes around. Your customers tell what a great job, as Erick was saying, I know this technician at this place. Why don't you take it here? That customer brings another customer to you, and it all works out great.
Yeah, and this all, I think, helps with retention. Without retention, it's, we talk about culture so much, but without retention, it's impossible to build a culture. And it's impossible to get that 20, 30-year tech that Erick was talking about, because they're just not going to stick around. And so, we talk about culture so much, but the importance of having a core staff that builds that culture is so important, because without that, you're not building anything. So appreciate that comment. And Scott, I mean, anything you would like to add to what Erick and Chuck had to say?
Yeah, my tagline on my LinkedIn profile is engaged employees drive organizational objectives. And I say that because it is so important in my mind, if you want to maximize the productivity of your business, to engage your employees, and recognizing them is the foundation of that. And we've had a couple of buzzwords in recruiting and retention over the last couple of years. The first one was the Great Resignation. Everybody was quitting their jobs, looking for the next best opportunity because they weren't fulfilled at their job. For some reason, COVID changed the way people view their life and their careers. And now there's a new buzzword out there. It's called quiet quitting. And quiet quitting is when people are showing up to work, but they're not maximized. They're not engaged. They're just doing what they need just to get by. And, for a lot of reasons, that's terrible for a business, right? So it's vital that we recognize, reach out, and connect with our employees.
How often do you hear, "Oh, that guy retired 5 years ago. He just didn't tell anybody"?
Exactly.
Well, there's a stat from one of our blogs that I wanted to bring up that says that 80% of employees would work harder if they felt better appreciated. I mean, 80%, that is a wide majority of people that if they felt like they were appreciated would put more effort in, would care more about the place that they're working at. And I think at the core of it is that when we're talking about employee recognition, is that it's got to be authentic. You can't just be hoaxy, kind of fake. It can't be a fake appreciation. It's got to be real. And Scott, I'll start with you on this one. How important is that authenticity? That it's actually real appreciation. It's not something that's made up to try and get a number.
Yeah, and it's difficult from a management point of view, trying to figure out exactly what it is that, and I think Erick already mentioned this, trying to understand what is important to each individual. So that authenticity, what's authentic to you? If I announced your name in a group setting and said, "Hey, Jay's done a wonderful job," that might come across as inauthentic to you. And so it's a fine line you're walking, and the only way to know what's authentic to one person or the other is to get to know that person. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, communication is such a big piece of this, right? To Erick, as you mentioned, get to know your people enough to where you know what embarrasses them, you know what is not flattering to them. And I guess, how do you get close with these guys and ladies? Like, how do you get to know them at a different level?
One of the things that I actually like doing is walking the shop and helping. Whether it's picking up boxes because they're taking them out, taking rotors out, or it's, you see them struggling and you go and you help them hold an exhaust and you say, "Hey, let me give it a shot." Or complimenting their tools, because I like tools. You'd be surprised how that conversation starts to roll. It goes into what happened this weekend, or they start telling you what happened the night before. But just being out there in their environment is a big deal. We do have reports and objectives to hit from an office standpoint, but being in the shop with them while it's hot or cold, or helping them push in a car, it's such a big deal. And it's one of the terms that I don't like is getting to their level. That's not what I'm looking. It's being at their level is the way I look at it. So their jobs are the most important part of the automotive industry. It's making sure we retain customers, making sure they come back. So being out there with them, to me, is an honor.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a mentor of mine was that you don't ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do. And I think that's a really important factor when you're a leader and trying to make sure that people know that you've got their backs. And I think that part alone, knowing that you've got their back, is so important. And I think there's a lot of opportunity when we talk about recognition, maybe not so much on the recognition side, but the trust side, that maybe they go into something where they screwed something up, right? They botched a job. It was their screw up. They know it. And rather than beating them over the head with it, maybe you can use that as encouragement or a training opportunity. But I think a lot can be learned in adversity. And Chuck, I'm curious, have you ever had an experience like that where maybe something didn't go right, but you kind of showed that you had their back? I think that goes so far.
That happens. I'm sure all of us have been in this business for about 20 years. It happens where a technician either misdiagnosed a concern, or a lot of times what happens is the description of the concern is wrong. So they're looking at wrong directions. There was a rattle that a customer had. They were hearing going downhill, as read from the repair order. And while on the test drive with the technician, to hear this noise, I had him pull over. We stopped. We called the customer, and the noise was heard at a totally different level. It was done while at a stop, when turning. I mean, it was a completely different way to diagnose this, to duplicate this concern. And being with the technician through that, while I was sitting in the car with him, where we were trying to find this noise, that built a rapport with that technician right then. And a lot of times, just going with them on test drives, or even like with your customers, going with your customers on test drives, helps you figure out those points. That brings you closer with the technicians all together. A lot of the younger technicians, it's a good thing that, like Erick was saying, ask them, how the weekend was doing. A lot of times you figure out their hobbies that way. You figure out if anything is going on at home that way, because a lot of times you have to be sensitive of that. Sometimes there's things that are going on at home that you're not aware of. But if you're once in a while asking about them, sometimes they'll open up to you. They'll tell you, something's going on at home. And with that, you can be sensitive to different areas with them, or you can understand if they needed some time off for certain concerns. That helps out a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think it gives you more stickiness with them too, right? Like, I think this business is all about people. Every business is all about people, but especially this business, and actually getting to know them on a personal level, so that you do know, going back to what we talked about before, knowing how to recognize them, so important. So now let's talk about actual ideas of ways that we can recognize people, right? And recognize technicians and hopefully maybe a non-traditional way. What are some outside the box things? What are some things that maybe we just don't do enough of, right? Maybe some pretty obvious things. And Scott, I'll start with you, because I think a lot of this is really easy to do. And I think there's a saying that says what's easy to do is what's easy not to do. And I think employee recognition falls directly in that bucket.
It really does. And there are so many different things you can do to recognize individual employees. But I think that the thing that Advantage Truck Group does very well is career development. So not every technician wants to start out as an apprentice and become a master technician. Some want to get into management, maybe shop foreman, or get into the service advisor roles. Some of them are more apt to learn how to become a trainer. Some of them might want to go into truck sales. One of the best truck sales guys we have here was a technician. So I think recognizing the contributions that the technicians want to make and helping them get to where they want to be is one of the most valuable things we do here at ATJ.
Well, that might be just a whole different idea of recognition in general, recognizing what they want, right? Understanding and recognizing what their career aspirations are. And I think, you know, we were talking about how do we make these people feel appreciated. Well, if I have an idea that you have my best interest in mind, I probably feel a little bit better. I feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy about the place I'm working at, because when you sit down from an HR standpoint and really understand that and help them get the training they need to be the technician they want to become. So many technicians really crave really, really good training, and not training just to check off a box so you meet manufacturer standards, or that you know, even for the badge. They truly take their craft seriously. They want that training, and recognizing that, you just kind of flip the switch on for me, because I'm like, that's a whole different part of recognition that we really don't talk about. It's good stuff. I like that.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. We have a technician. She went through a 2-year college course at automotive training, and she was a great technician. Started off as lube tech, went to a main shop team. She was doing great. And then somewhere she decided, you know, maybe I don't want to do this. So then she kind of went down the other side of the road. Instead of going right, she went left, and she's writing service now, and she's doing a great job at doing that. But I feel good that she didn't feel like she had to leave our dealership, or she had to go seek out a whole nother career stream to be able to feel satisfied and keep working with us. Because she's doing a great job where she's at. She was doing a great job before. We want to keep those employees at our store.
Yeah, if they're good people. Yeah, if they're good people. Yeah, I mean, if they're good people, find a spot for them. I think that's, you know, if they're good people that are showing up to work and are willing to learn, and you know, again, you're building that culture when you add good people to it. And if you find what fits them best, not everybody's good at everything, right? I myself was a terrible technician, so I can feel that that appreciation for techs, but that I think that's a really good point. Not to feel scared that they have to go somewhere else to reach their goals. Erick, anything in regard to actual ideas of recognition that you could add to what they're saying here?
The two things that I would talk about is there's a traditional and then there's a non-traditional. The traditional is understanding that in the company, the place that you're at, there is a recognition program. So they understand that there's value behind all the employees, which we have here at our store. It's a monthly employee of the month. And it's, you know, there's cash prize, there's a lunch, and there's a plaque that goes with it. So, and in the store culture, we understand that there is an employee of the month and we recognize. And then there's a non-traditional. The non-traditional sometimes is as simple as a genuine handshake. You'd be surprised at wonders that it does when you go out and you tell somebody, hey, I seen that you stayed late last night. Thank you. It means the world to me and the customer that the service are with us. Sometimes it's as simple as just a handshake and a genuine thank you. That those words are so powerful that sometimes we forget it. So I try to do untraditional things. You know, sometimes I'll find out that, you know, somebody needs to go take their kids to school, or the first day of kindergarten, which we just did a couple of weeks ago. And I told the tech, pulled them in, what are you doing here? I said, why are you here? Get out of my office, go take your son to his first day of kindergarten, and don't come back until you tell me how it is. Bring some pictures. Those are the non-traditional forms that sometimes you could just recognize in those ways.
I think that's the sign of a good leader right there. I mean, really.
We didn't get that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Years ago, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody told us to go home to your kid. We seen our kid at the end of the day. That was about it.
That's right.
Oh, and that's changed a lot, right? Sorry to cut you off there, Chuck, but like that was one thing. I was talking to an older gentleman a few weeks back, and he had mentioned that he wasn't even at his child's birth because he had to work, and it was like one of those things that it's really changed and evolved over the years, and I think that's a pretty good point right there. Chuck, go ahead.
The whole industry is changing, like you were saying, like us being able to take time off to, you know, spend time with our kids and family has changed. As far as at our store, we have a 4-day work week, so there's a good mix between your home life and your work life. With 3 days off, that extra day means a whole lot. I mean, you could do a lot in that extra day. As far as recognizing your employees as a whole, I think it's hard to keep telling your technicians, we had another record month. We did X amount in labor. Everybody's doing a great job, breaking records, and they're like, oh yeah, can we see some of that? So a lot of times, and it's true. Like a lot of times, it isn't pay. A lot of times, it's like you were saying, it's the AC system that works great in shops. And a lot of times, it's just events. Companies should do events. Like for years and years and years, a lot of dealerships didn't do like employee Christmas parties or holiday parties. That was just gone. And I think a majority of dealerships kind of brought that back. We brought that back, and we have relays, we have rafting trips. Those sort of things count because you get your employees to get together outside of work, but still kind of with everybody at work, and they get to bond and have a good time.
I have a story there which was very interesting. A dealership, this was on the dealership side, that I had worked with. They're basically, the owner cut the Christmas party, right? They weren't going to have a Christmas party anymore. And there was already kind of this infighting. They didn't really like the owner that much. And what happened was the entire dealership got together and had their own Christmas party, but didn't invite the upper management. And so when you think about the infighting that creates and the animosity, because what do you think they're talking about at that party? They're like, oh, that cheap ass, he made all this money this year and he's not paying for our Christmas party, so we're going to have a party in spite of him. That's going the opposite direction of what you want to do. So I think, it is things like that we can quickly discount. Nobody wants to go to a Christmas party. Well, you don't know that. You're just assuming that.
You got to admit, that's still a good group of employees that would get together outside of work, even apart from management. And they had that's actually pretty cool.
It was cool to see.
But like Scott says, we have our owner, Russ. He'll walk through the shop, and it's actually a family business. His father owned it before him. His mother has an office. She has an office here at the building too, and it's great. And to have your owner walk around the dealership, talk with people, and he loves to meet two new technicians when they come in. And when we do our barbecue, he's out there helping. He's out there talking to everybody when they come to the line. He'll help flip some burgers here and there. That's actually really nice. It's nice to be able to see your owner, shake their hand. I worked at many dealerships where I've never seen the owner. The owner is somewhere across the country. I'd never heard of him, never seen him. But it's nice to see him on the premises walking through your shop.
That goes such a long ways. That's such a good point. We do have a couple questions here that I want to address. Emily DeWitt, hi Emily, hope you're doing well. Eric, how do you do the Employee of the Month? We have discussed it, but don't want it to become a popularity contest only. That's a great question.
Our director puts the management panel together via Zoom, and everybody gets a choice and the reason why they're picking that employee. And it lasts roughly about 45 minutes to an hour. But what's really cool about it is to see the amount of passion that every manager pours into their decision, into their candidate. And once the meeting ends, everybody kind of runs out and starts telling everybody, hey, you're a candidate for Employee of the Month. And it just spreads through the entire building. Within the day, everybody knows who the candidates are. But that's the cool feeling, is the passion that we all put into our candidate that we're looking to be Employee of the Month.
That's really cool. And I there was a couple other questions, one being who determines the Employee of the Month? And I think Eric just mentioned that. And I think that might be a little different per location. If you're a small independent shop out there, that's obviously going to be a little bit more challenging. You might not have the staff to be able to do an Employee of the Month. If it might be the same person every single month. So you have to get a little bit more creative in how you go about that. But I think being able to understand that it's an important thing and trying to figure out a way, maybe it's add a parking spot. I know at a place that I worked at early in my career, they had a parking spot for Employee of the Month. In the middle of winter in Wisconsin, that was a really, really nice spot to have. So it is one of those things that I think can be really big. Brooke Harmon, you had asked a question on being in a small town, and trying to find people when there's just not enough? I think that is, it's a great question. It's one that we talk a lot about on the WrenchWay side. It's a really hard thing, right? And I think a lot of this recognition can go a long way in terms of the retention side, making sure you keep the people that you've already got. The recruiting side is a whole different animal, which we touch a lot on a lot of our content. Encourage you to join a Service Drive Live or listen to a podcast. Just know that there's not an easy button for it, right? It's not something that just comes overnight. You have to work at it, work at developing your own, a lot of different strategies there. If you'd like to talk about that, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you more in depth with it. With that, one of the things that I thought was funny that came out of our pre-meeting was talking about doing too much employee recognition. Now, this sounds kind of contrary to everything that we're talking about today, but I do think there's a time when you can be too over the top in terms of employee recognition. And I used the example yesterday when we had the pre-meeting of, if you're going out and patting somebody on the back for doing one great alignment, or something along those lines, something really simple, it's probably a little too over the top, and then you lose the authenticity, you lose the value in it just because it's too diluted, right? And Scott, I'm curious to see or hear in your years of experience if maybe you've seen that in action where there's been maybe a little over the top in terms of employee recognition.
Well, and I think that comes from, sometimes you've got the best intentions. So you set up these programs, and administering the program becomes overwhelming, right? So you can't manage the program. So you roll out this program to the employees and you let them know how we're going to recognize them. And then it becomes very difficult and time consuming or costly to manage the program. So you have to show a little bit of, I've learned that I have to show a little bit of restraint when I'm setting those things out, but you're right. It is a fine line between valuable and watered down recognition.
Chuck, you're a hell of a nice guy. Do you have a problem with giving too much recognition?
Not really, just because I'm not sure. Everybody here has been in the business for about 20 years. We're kind of old school where there wasn't a whole lot of recognition, where there wasn't a
Good point. Good point.
So it's we're all from an era to where if you did get on a pat back, you felt pretty good about it. And I think I think we're all still genuine about that. I can see a point. I've seen where there has been like individuals were recognized too much, and that person becomes a pet, and everybody knows that guy in the shop that gets pat in the back for doing nothing. So we all gotta kind of watch that to see make sure nobody's your pet, nobody's your friend, and not your friend, but nobody seems like the guy that's gonna run and tell
the favorite.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna run and tell Eric, which is hard to do sometimes, because sometimes the guys in the shop are your guys. You know what I mean? But you just got to spread that love around and make sure everybody in the shop doesn't look like that, because if you recognize one person too much, somebody's going to look at it and feel different about it.
That's you hear that all the time. That person gets the gravy jobs, and they get fed, better than everybody else. And I don't know, Eric, if you've seen that, but it feels like I hear that all the time from techs.
Yeah, and just the way Chuck was saying, came up with the old school mentality, and same thing with my father bringing me up. It's the old school mentality. And one of the things that Scott touched on that I thought was really important was making sure that you have a volume knob on that recognition, but keeping the consistency for the long term is what's important. Once you keep that consistency and that recognition, you could balance that out a little bit better. And look, we've all messed up. We've all improved in that area of our craft, but knowing how to keep that balance of recognition is extremely important throughout the entire shop.
Yeah, you don't want to lose the value of it, right? Like you want them to feel special when you do something like that, right? And if everybody gets a pat in the back, or it's the same person all the time, or it's the same program all the time, it maybe doesn't feel all that special. So I think being able to think through that a little bit more. I'm terrible at that. I get really enthusiastic about little things, and so I have trouble myself with that side. And that was kind of why I wanted to ask the question, was because I do think it's important that when you do give a compliment, that it comes from the heart, it's authentic, and it's real, right? Like it's actually something that they should get congratulated for or recognized for, and I think that's important. Scott, you look like you got something to say.
Yeah, recognition from management is a great thing. But it's also good when employees have the ability to recognize their peers. We've got an intranet where employees can go on and shout out, say, hey, thanks to Tommy for helping me do this particular job, or I noticed that Susan was staying late last night taking care of something, and so they can call each other out on a company platform where other people can see and get a little bit of recognition peer to peer, and I think there's some value to that too.
Is there an awkwardness with that? And the reason I ask is, if techs, me growing up as a tech or in a shop, it was awkward. I don't think you don't see a whole lot of technicians going around saying, I love that person. I love you. I love you. It's not the warm and fuzzies a lot of times. So is it hard to get it out of them?
So some of them more so than others. Like Chuck said, I'm old school. I've been around for a while, and when I was growing up, there wasn't all of that stuff going on, right? But things are a little bit different now with newer generations, and they actually engage in it way more than I thought they would. It's refreshing to see, and Chuck spoke about the value of team, and that helps create that team bond when people are talking to each other. It doesn't always have to come from management. This is for any of the three of you, when you first started out in the business, did you ever work with like that really old school person that like their compliment was hey, you didn't screw up today, that's great, have some of that?
I still work with him. I literally, it's a medium coffee with 3 creams, and I'll go leave it on his toolbox like once every couple months. Just I'll get there before him and I'll just go leave it there. He knows who it came from. He knows what it's about. There's nothing. He knows that's all love, and leave it at that. He'll walk by the window and just raise his coffee. I mean, that's it. We're good.
Yeah. It's kind of that unspoken, almost watching like Yellowstone right now, like where you don't see them probably dancing around and telling each other they appreciate each other, but there's little things like that when you get to know somebody that it can really help out with that. So it is kind of fun to talk about that. The last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll go to some slides with some key takeaways here, is how do you know if your recognition is working, or if you've got work to do on your recognition program? Scott, I'll start with you.
I'm a big fan of data. So we track our numbers. We're a fairly large organization. We've got 400 people working for us. So we track retention, and then also social media. We kind of keep an eye on what people are saying about us on the streets. And it's important. It really is important, and getting as much information as you possibly can to determine, and then employee feedback too. We do anonymous surveys. So people, we send out a list of questions to people, let them come back to us. It's a retention tool, but we want honest feedback, and those one-on-one relationships are very important, and you can't undervalue those. However, it's important to give people an opportunity to speak freely, so you understand where they're coming from. So anonymous surveys are really good. Again, some people don't want to partake in them, but when you do get feedback, you have to listen to it.
Yeah, ear to the ground, being open to it. If there's something that you're failing at or not doing the greatest at as a business, it's a great opportunity to get better. I say it a lot, but there's no business, there's no person out there that's perfect. And there's going to be things that you can poke holes in regardless of who you are. but the ones that are open to that feedback and able to get better, I think, are the ones that set themselves apart from everybody else.
Absolutely.
Eric, anything different in terms of how you understand if it's working?
I rely on my daily tech huddles, just by the voice and the response they give you. The tone will tell you if they're happy or not, and you just kind of follow the trend. If you got somebody who's giving you that low tone voice 3 days in a row, you better pull aside and figure out, and don't do it in the office. You do it out in the shop or in the parking lot. You figure out what's going on. To me, the daily tech huddles mean so much to me in figuring out what the mood of the technicians are, either individually or as a group.
Yeah, and you can, a lot of times, just on body language alone, can kind of tell in a tech huddle, where you stand at, how, if it's cold and you got people that are, hands crossed and are, really just, okay, get this over with. I don't want to hear it. Like you can tell that, you can feel that, and make sure you dive into that. Maybe take that person to lunch that day, or, try to figure out a way to get engaged with them fast, because if you let that go, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt. And the faster you can nip it in the butt, the faster your life is going to be easier. Chuck, do you have anything to add there?
The way I could tell it works is when your technicians are speaking to other technicians, like I was saying earlier, and they're trying to get their friends to come work in the same shop. Because if you don't like where you work, you don't want your friend who you trust outside of work to come work with you. So if my techs are referring our spot to their friends and family, I think we're doing a good job. And we get a lot of techs that word of mouth, friends of friends, and they come work with us and they apply. We speak with them, walk around the shop, and they join up, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I love that, and I do love the both the emotional and the data side. Scott, you mentioned retention rates. If you're not measuring retention, make sure you start doing that. It's not that hard to do, and the more you can do that, the more you can track satisfaction, the more you can do surveying, the more you can even do leadership training, right? And being able to identify areas where a lot of managers have had a technical background and might not know that management side as well. So if you can get them leadership training, or being able to understand cues of something that might mean something more, right? I think all of that goes into having happy employees. At the end of the day, that's why we're here talking today, right? We want you to create a culture and an environment where people feel loved and feel like they're a part of something bigger. That purpose side is so big right now. Just making sure that you're intentional about all of this is so important. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. You guys can stay on camera here for just a second, just to share the key takeaways. So I'm going to go through this first one pretty in depth. So personalization, one size does not fit all. Get to know your people, actually know them, and know that they're different people. I say it often, but the days of just thinking that every single tech is an outdoorsman and wants to be outside all the time is not right anymore. There's a lot of them, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of them that love gaming. There's a lot of them that love stuff that I have no idea, music, whatever it is. There's different mindsets, there's different people. We can't continue to put all technicians in the same bucket. We've got to know them at an individual basis. Consistency, it can be easy to focus on your numbers and forget about this stuff, right? And we've got a million irons in the fire every single day. This can oftentimes be put on the back burner, and I think it's really important to consistently do it. We promote to our clients to have a monthly staffing meeting, right? So if you're having that monthly staffing meeting, make sure you're looking at that. Are we doing a good enough job with employee recognition? Are we looking at different opportunities to be able to engage our people? Third point is authenticity. I cannot stress this enough in every aspect of your business. The more authentic you are, the more trust you're going to build, the more friends in the business you're going to have. That authenticity and truly being we talk about employee recognition. If it's fake, people smell through it like crazy. If it's real, I think they take it to heart and they really enjoy that. So be authentic and judge yourself on that, right? If you find yourself just going through the motions to do it because you said you were going to do it, that's not a great way to go about it. And that intentionality, don't just assume it'll happen naturally. it has to be a priority. You have to have this on your list of things that you need to do great at, because without people, we're nothing, right? Without great people, our businesses are nothing. We're not generating revenue. We're not doing anything. So if it's not intentional and you're not purposeful about it, you're going to find yourself behind the 8 ball. Last slide here, we've got a few different examples of ways to improve your technician recognition efforts. One of the things that came up yesterday that I thought was really cool, this was an internal meeting we had here at WrenchWay, was that we were reading about doing an intake form on your onboarding, and basically saying, how do you take your coffee? What kind of beer do you like? Like whatever it is, to get to know them a little bit better, so that on that day when you're trying to go into the office and you're like, hey, I've got an extra 20 minutes, I'm going to stop and grab everybody coffee, that you actually know how they take it, or like what they want, if they like donuts, or if they don't like donuts, or if they eat healthy, unlike me. It's good to know that kind of stuff so that you can really cater to them, right? If you know that stuff up front, makes your life a lot easier. But some other very, very specific examples of things that we can do, and we do have, I would encourage those of you out there that are WrenchWay clients, go out and look at our guides. We've got a really nice guide on employee recognition, different ways that you can do that. And maybe the whole intent of this webinar, our guides, or anything, is to spark ideas and to spark execution of ideas, right? A lot of times we don't do a great job at the execution side. We leave these meetings, we're super excited, and then nothing gets done because the daily life comes along. So we've got some great things out there to help you in that, in your employee recognition programs, some great blogs, our podcast, we talk about it a lot. So whether it's WrenchWay or whatever you're using, what I would say is be intentional, make sure you're learning about this and that you're getting better. And so with that, I want to say thank you to the 3 panelists today. You guys were wonderful. It was an absolute pleasure to sit and talk about this thing, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you. It was an honor being on, Dave. Much appreciate you inviting us onto the panel. Thank you. Pleasure meeting everybody on as well.
Nice meeting you guys.
Now everybody go check out Service Drive Live on Sunday.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Take care, everybody.